Get up.
What do you want?
I can't breathe. Please, the knee in my neck. I can't breathe.
I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
I don't have no more tears, honestly. I've cried enough. I've cried enough. I'm here for one reason, for my brother's honor. He was murdered.
You know, I was as sad as I've ever been.
What happened to George Floyd was all the way wrong.
I need you to understand how painful this is. I need you to understand how painful it is to be reminded every day that your race means nothing. And that isn't the case anymore. That is never the case anymore. We are going to try today. We are a physical representation of our support for George Floyd. Black lives have always mattered. We have always been important. We have always meant something. We have always succeeded, regardless. And now is the time.
Greetings, folks. It's Zion Hezekiah here, aka Hez. We're recording on Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020. This is episode number 18 of season 3, and you're tuned into Toronto Talk Sports and more. Today's show is in loving memory of my late uncle, Trevor Wilson, who recently passed away peacefully in his sleep at his Brampton residence. And today's show, which is entitled I Can't Breathe, is dedicated to all those who have been affected by police brutality and all forms of racism. Joining me on today's panel, we have my dear friend and our broadcast contributor, Miss Angela Williams. Hey, Angela.
Hi there.
We have Mr. Audley Stephenson, the Deputy Commissioner of the National Basketball League of Canada. Hey, Audley.
Hey, I appreciate being here. I'm not going to hold it against you that you didn't call me your dear friend, but that's okay.
Oh, boy.
I'm just okay. It's okay. We'll let that one slide. You're my dear friend, man. How's that?
Oh, boy. God love for you. Mad love for you. Speaking of mad love, another gentleman I've known for a hot minute, Mr. Adrian Kwan, our Toronto Talk Sports and More sound engineer, who I was saying in pre-production, it's rare to see Adrian on camera. He's always behind the scenes. Sometimes I have to kind of drag him on certain segments. But Adrian, we're very, very happy to have you join us on this very special show today. So welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. Glad to be on.
Absolutely. And all the way, guys, from Montgomery County, Maryland, we're very, very happy to be joined by commercial model, media personality, and activist, Raven McCree. Raven, welcome to the show.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. Absolutely. So guys, once again, today's show is entitled I Can't Breathe. I Can't Breathe. And we're talking about racism, oppression, and police brutality. So there's a lot going on in the world right now, and specifically in your neck of the woods, Raven, the United States of America, especially as a result of the recent murder of George Floyd in Minnesota at the hands of local police officers. So guys, to kick off, no specific question, to kick it off, but just with everything going on, I thought we should start off just by sharing generally, how are we feeling? What are your thoughts? And how are you feeling about just all of the unrest and everything that's going on around us? Raven, let's begin with you. Once again, that's your first time with us here on the show. Thank you for joining us. It's great to get a firsthand perspective from somebody very close to the situation in the United States of America. So once again, welcome to the show, and please be first to chime in and let us know what are your thoughts on everything.
Thank you. So my thoughts on everything, it's a lot. I've never experienced so much at one time because, we have COVID-19. Everyone's supposed to be social distancing. Everyone's trying to be safe. The World Health Organization has told us that, Blacks and African Americans, they're most susceptible. So we're the ones at risk the most. And then we have police brutality where constantly it seems like whenever you go on social media, there's always another video of another Black man or woman getting killed. And it's a lot. We're in a time right now where it's, you know, a lot of the news and stuff comes from social media. So even though you might not want to go and check on social media every day because it's so much, it can be a lot of information, a lot of negative and false information at one time. It's like I'm drawn to it every single day to check it. And right now it's very, very exhausting. It's very exhausting. But from what I've seen, I'm starting to see at least, you know, more people fighting for this battle, more people fighting for Black Lives Matter, and more people understanding why this is not just, you know, some people just assume that it's politics. No, it's not. It's humanity. It's human rights. 100%. And so for me, it's kind of the positive side of it is there are people supporting all races, all backgrounds, all colors, and that's a nice thing to see.
Going off Raven, you know, what she just said, you know, certainly a wave of emotions. You're sort of feeling everything all at once. The tsunami of emotions in terms of sort of there's exhaustion, there's fatigue, mentally, emotionally, psychologically. We're bombarded with everything all at once, and social media isn't certainly helping that cause. At the same time, it's a helpful tool, but we're also experiencing a lot, at once. So that certainly is feeding into what we're experiencing now. You know, we talk about certainly the police brutality and what that's and what that's doing to people. You know, myself included, there's very few, very few Black men or people, for that matter, that haven't experienced something that has resonated, that stuck with you, and then maybe you've gone through that experience, you've passed it, but now with all this going on, in some instances you're sort of reliving sort of that trauma again, if you will, and that's difficult for people. And I really like the fact that we're seeing people being very conscious of it. The conversations are active, they're regular. More and more people are stepping up. So I think that those are important steps to a long healing process and a journey that we've all got to go through.
Everything that Raven and Audley said, it's absolutely true. The social media piece, like, there's just so much information. Like, even for me, the last couple of days, I've tried to stay away from the news and the social media. Just also just being locked down. You know, like, everyone's already going through some type of mental hurdle, even before all this happened with the injustice and the death of George Floyd, and even before that, the runner in Georgia there. So, to be honest with you, I didn't even watch the video. Like, I saw the image of it. We've seen it before. We've heard it all before. And it's like, it's upsetting. It's frustrating. You know, I don't come on this show a lot. One of the episodes I came on was when we had that long talk, just that one-on-one talk about the whole Kaepernick situation in the NFL. And this brought back that conversation that we had. And, you know, the thing is, it's, you know, with the news and the media today, like, it's always to incite some type of reaction. And I get it. People are mad. People are upset. So people are, you know, they're out there protesting, and they should be out there voicing their concerns and their right to speak and the justice that they want. But I also know that, like COVID, like this pandemic, it's going to pass. And when the initial reaction passes, that's when the work has to be done, to be solution-oriented. You know, we talk about awareness. You know what I tell people about awareness is 2020. People are aware. You're either aware and you don't care, or you're just living under a rock, right? So, yeah, like that's what's been going through my mind, is like the solution aspect of it. I mean, there's levels, right? But definitely, just, it's upsetting and it's frustrating.
The last couple of days, certainly the past week, a lot of sadness, and anger and frustration. You know, clearly, I'm not going to understand those footsteps, but it's very clear that things must change. The protests, people should be in the streets every day, and we can't let this this pass. We have to stand up, and we have to stand up every day. It has to continue. And like Adrian, I'm looking for what do we do next? Once the protests aren't in the street every single day, I'm an optimist. That's my nature. So I have to believe that these protests and the education that we put out there will incite change. It has to, because we have to move past. I just don't know if there's any healing that can be done, but we have to fix this. This can't be the way my children live and the future children. It can't be, not anymore.
Very emotional. It's very sad what's going on. I want to pick up on what you were saying there, Angela, in respect to protesting, and I'll throw it to you, Raven. I know in your neck of the woods, in your city, you've been on the front lines of some of the peaceful protesting, not the other stuff that we've seen all throughout, the United States of America and other places as well. Tell us a little bit about how those protests have gone, how they've been, and as we begin to get into the conversation here, everyone's kind of hinting at this S word of solution. We'll kind of get to that, I guess, after, in terms of what are the possible solutions to all of this that's going on, and is there an end game, an end result, a positive one as a result of these protests? What are your thoughts, Raven?
Right. So, what I can tell you from what I've seen in DC, I was out there and it was peaceful protests. However, at night is when all these other people would come and just come to riot and to try to burn things down. Now, for a while, there were a lot of people stopping it, telling them, stop, do not burn down our city. This is not how we operate. Because it's people that aren't from DC coming in and destroying it. However, there are some people that just say that, this might be the only way to get attention. This might be the only way to get them to pay attention to what's going on, to get them to listen to the message, because nothing else. We had Colin Kaepernick taking a knee and everybody was going crazy. They were like, oh my gosh, how can you disrespect our flag like that, as if a flag is anything like a man's life or a woman's life or somebody's life. So I think that's something that it's been kind of crazy seeing. But yesterday we had our president have a photo op. Mm-hmm. And when he went to go take his picture during a peaceful protest, mm-hmm. he had them pepper sprayed. He had them tear gas. He had rubber bullets.
Protesters. These were peaceful protesters. Yep.
Peaceful broad daylight.
Oh, yeah.
Right in broad daylight.
Yeah.
World saw.
And it's incredible to me that things like this are still happening, and we have some people still defending him. Some people saying, click, that's fake news. I don't believe it. Like, what? They were pushing away journalists and reporters and newscasts. I think I went on social media and one reporter was shot with a rubber bullet in his neck.
I saw that.
Yeah. So to me, it's just like, if peaceful protesting isn't the answer, if the president is showing us that this is not the answer, then what is? Because,
Sorry, Raven. It's our leadership. I think that's mm-hmm. where it lies. Like, we need leadership from the top all the way down to be committed to this. So when your own leader isn't modeling the behavior that we all need to see, then I don't know what good can come out of that. So it's disappointing, it's disheartening, and it's sad, because that's not the way. There are people that want to do this in a peaceful manner, to get the point across, to make sure they're heard, to make sure the issues are on the table. But all this other stuff, it's almost a divisiveness, right? You're creating a division between the issue and everything else, and that's really unfortunate. It was difficult to watch and see.
Leadership is very important, and I don't want this to be necessarily a political discussion, but it is a part of the conversation, and we do have to go there. When you do have a leader who appears to be, guys, more interested in uniting his own base as opposed to uniting the country, that's an issue. Because in times like this, when people are hopeless, they do look up to their elected officials, to their leaders, the leaders of the country. And who else more powerful than, the leader of the free world, the man who sits in the White House, the president of the United States. And it just seems that more and more his rhetoric, his comments, his tone, his tweets are just, very, very, divisive. And, it's just making a lot of people more angry and more enraged. I want to touch on something that you said there, Raven. I think it's very important. When we talk about, I see that there's, a shift in the media or a change in the narrative. And even Adrian kind of touched on this to an extent. Rather than, putting the focus on the actual issue of, police brutality and, racism and, just oppression, for, persons of color. More and more when we see these images on, our local news and national news of, looters going inside and, smashing store windows and taking items and things of that nature, which nobody condones. I don't know anyone who really condones that other than probably the people who do it. They might have some way to justify that. But when we see all that negativity and all those things going on, the result of the anger of certain individuals, and perhaps there might be certain groups, it seems to distract or take away once again from, the main message, the main cause, the core issue, the core problem. So going back to, the possible solution, if there is any solution, how can we even possibly begin to talk about a solution if the actual issue itself is getting lost in the mix? Adrian, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we could talk all day about solutions because there's so many levels to this, right? When I was in university, social justice has always been a big thing for me. Can't stand racism. But I'm a realist. I understand that it doesn't matter. Like, racism will always exist. There's always going to be some form of prejudice. So my solution, my idea is always about trying to curb it, trying to get more people to not be prejudiced and racist. And to me, the fundamental, it starts with integration. Because nobody's born a racist. Like, nobody comes into this world hating people because of their color. It's taught. And studies have shown, like, kids up to like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, like, they don't even see color. Like, they don't look at somebody and say, oh, that's a black kid, or that's a white kid, or that's a brown kid. They don't understand that. They get taught. Obviously, at some point, individuals start to identify, and they want to belong. And that's when they start identifying with their heritage, their ancestry, their culture, their race, or whatever. But I find that if you don't integrate, then you're never going to understand that person as a person. You're going to see them for what the media shows them out to be, for what Hollywood shows them out to be, to what your parents tell you they are, to what other people tell you they are. So that's one of the biggest problems I find living. Like, I lived in Georgia. That's the first time I've ever been so far south in the States. And I didn't understand segregation and racism on a level until I moved there. And the segregation is real. Okay. And people are so segregated. Southern hospitality is real. People are nice to you on the surface, right? They'll say hi, whatever, but they're not hanging out with you. They're not inviting you to their home for a barbecue, right? So integration is key. And even when we talk about policing, and I know, we're moving away from just the race part of it, community policing, like that, they don't believe in that. Like, U.S. police are militarized already. Like, they don't understand that. And that's part of integration too. If the police would integrate themselves in the communities they work in, that builds more trust. Now people don't see them for, like, even them, like, people just see them as the boys in blue. Like, Tupac said it. The police are a gang, right? So, like I said, there's levels, and it starts with integration and then culture, right? There's a culture of violence in America. They love their guns, they love their violence, and all these things, it's like a melting pot for this type of behavior and attitude. There's just, like I said, there's so many things that you could try to dissect and break down to even start trying to come up with solutions.
Thank you for sharing that perspective. I want to switch gears just a little bit here, guys. When we think about Tamir Rice, Sandra Bland, even going back to Trayvon Martin, I mean, the list goes on and on. Why now? Why is it that we're seeing all of this, unrest, all of this protest, if you want to call it frustration, anger, and of course, rightfully so? Why now? What is unique with what's happening right now where we're seeing people, at their wits' end and taking it, to that next level? What are your thoughts on that, Raven?
So I think right now we're seeing it because, it's election time again. We're trying to figure out who we're going to vote for. It shouldn't be that hard. But I think because all of this is going on, people are really trying to make sure, over the last 4 years, what have we dealt with? What have we seen? What have we seen him do? What have we seen him say is okay to happen? I mean, he just said looting and shooting. If they're looting, shoot them. So I think that with that going on right now, I mean, when I think back to the 2016 election, I was in school at Coastal Carolina University in South Carolina. And when I tell you, I'm from Montgomery County, which is the most diverse city, county in America. So I didn't know, I knew racism existed and I know it still existed, but I didn't know how bad it was in other places. So when I went to South Carolina, I had a huge, huge culture shock. And yeah, I was walking to school and people were telling me to go back to my country. And I'm like, I was born here, but you know what I mean? It was so outrageous. And so I think because we've seen America for its true self over the last 4 years, because these people that feel this type of way, the racists and all the KKK, all of that has just come out because of Trump. It's almost as if he endorses them. So because of all of that, we're now at the point where it's like, look, everything is on the line. You see what continues to happen. You see what our president is saying, okay, we cannot go on like this anymore. We just can't. We can't. And I think that people are finally able to see and finally being able to understand what this is doing to the Black community. It's killing us. We've seen what ICE has done to the Latino and other immigrants coming to this country, and the cages. It's just, we've seen all that. We're not doing this again. We don't want to go through this anymore. And so right now it's, what can we do to make sure that our kids, like you said, our kids' future is better. I want to have kids. I want to make sure my nephew can go to school and be okay. I want to make sure my nephew can buy Skittles from the candy shop or from 7-Eleven and not worry about going home and being shot. So I think right now, it's just everyone is finally coming to that understanding that, hey, if we want to make a change, the first step is voting. I just voted today. And then
Very good.
I always vote. I think it's just, everyone should do it. Every election should vote. To me, it's common sense, but some people don't do it. So I think it's just, focusing on how we can make things better and focusing on holding people accountable. So I think that's why it's just this death and the next death. It's insane right now. And thanks to social media, everything is there.
And I think it being recorded.
You said they're holding people accountable. Go ahead.
It's right there. There is no more denying it. There's nothing. It's right there. It's in your face, and you can't. There is no more denying it. It's not maybe. It's not could have. It's not anything. It's right there. It's been right there, but I think people are just have had enough. And Raven, when you say that you went to vote, that's to me one of the solutions, and it's not going to be the only solution, but voting is very important. in your communities in changing the sheriffs and changing and knowing who you should vote for and the changes that need to be made. And what I find interesting that today is a big voting day in many places, yet I have not seen very much media about it at all. And to me, social media, on the news, and I mean, our news is going to be we get it very streamlined to what they want us to see. Certainly up here, we don't have as many media outlets, and there's YouTube and there's online. But I'll tell you, I was like, there's voting today? Oh, okay. So I went online and I did like a little bit of looking to see, and there's voting in a lot of places today. And you are not
overshadowed, right? It's being overshadowed with what's going on.
Exactly. You are not hearing about that.
No. And you think about voting is so important. What's in terms of the shape of the direction of the country, and you're right, it's just being overshadowed with all sorts of other things.
How about all the protesters, and as they should be loud and they should be cheered, but how about all the protesters in the states that need to be voting today, march those protests down to the voting stations? I think that helpful. It's not the only solution, it's not the only answer, but voting is very important, because for me, when I see things on the media and I see a place where there's a sheriff who's walking with his community down the street, and I see others kneeling with their community and walking side by side, I think, well, can we not learn something from whatever's happening in that community and some of the other communities? Because I don't want to think that they're all bad, that all of the counties and the sheriffs are bad people. I hope that people can vote in some change.
Well, I think again, we're talking about the levels and layers of social issues, economic issues, and you're talking about voting today. I wasn't aware of it. I mean, I don't live in America anymore. But that's also part of their strategy, right? It's the distraction, the constant distractions. And, how do they conquer, right? They divide you, have you fight each other while they go about their daily business. I don't want to harp on the NFL thing. You guys know I'm a huge sports fan, but I did a little digging. So in 2016, the NFL owners had donated upwards of over 69% to Republican candidates, right? That was the Trump election year. Mm-hmm. So when we look at a situation where Kaepernick was kneeling for the cause and the NFL kind of just blacklisted him, and there were a lot of people that were, I always say, you follow the money. You support the NFL. They're putting money into the politicians that are becoming elected, who are the ones that are creating the policies and creating the divide in the nation. And again, there's just so many things to look at in terms of you can vote, but then what are those elected officials doing for you, mm-hmm. right? And then how do we hold those people accountable, right? Because, you can't deny it. Everyone sees it, but it's the same thing happening over and over again. There was a report, I think it was in 2006, done by the FBI, that said that white supremacist organizations were infiltrating police forces all across America.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So, these things, people know. It's out there. It's public information. It's been reported on, and nothing has been done. So if this
sorry, Adrian, but to your point on that, it has to be continually put out there. And I think it was Angela referenced earlier, let's not stop talking about it and it ends now. I think the conversation has to be, it has to constantly put on the forefront. And we talk about accountability, hold people accountable, that they don't, and hold our leaders accountable. So it has to be addressed, because what we don't want is, great, we're doing this Blackout Tuesday and Black Lives Matters and all these social media campaigns.
Exactly.
What we don't want to see happen is that when this day is done, or maybe next week, or whatever happens, maybe, when whatever legal action is taken against these officers and that case is over, we don't forget about it, right? what comes out of all these conversations. And, you know, so if there's a report that was found in 2006 that was clearly evident that there's a problem, then it should have been brushed off to the side. It should have been followed up with. It should have been continued on, because, you know, all our efforts are in vain at that point if we just leave it there.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what always is like my biggest concern. Like when this is over, because it will pass, like all this stuff will pass. Like when everything's calm and everyone assumes things back to normal, like
we can't go back to normal.
That's
where we have to stop. There is no going back to normal.
It's never going to go back to normal.
This can't go back to normal.
Right. Well, normal was never good enough, right?
It's never good enough. It has not good enough.
Why we're having this problem? Why we're having these conversations? And
because people have thought it's normal. It has to stay It has to stay current. It has to stay every day. Because what's going to happen is the time is going by. I haven't heard anybody talk about arresting these 3 officers, the other 3, in days.
No.
I've heard curfews. I've heard next curfew. I've heard Army. I've heard the state police. I've heard this. I haven't heard like, hey, why have we not gotten those other 3 behind bars right now? Why are they still
exactly
okay? Why are there 4 police officers in Atlanta, Georgia, arrested for their behavior during these riots before those 3 police officers who aided and abetted a murderer?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. You know what? When you go back to Hez's question about why now, and there's all sorts of reasons, certainly the time of year with the voting from a political aspect, but when you even go back to that specific case and watching, the whole world watch, you know, a man gasping for his breath. We all can relate when someone says, I can't breathe. We all know what that means, clutching your throat and going, you know, wanting that air, wanting that oxygen, and that was taken away from him. An officer with his knee on his neck, and not a care in the world, but the other officers standing around as well. So to your point, Angela, why weren't they also implicated? Why weren't they also held accountable, right? All of these things, and then you factor so what's happened with, you know, we're still in the COVID-19 pandemic, and that very much is underlying what's going on. There's lots of anxiety and concerns around that moving forward. So, you know, I think now is, if there's a time that things come to a head with all that's been going on and all that we're facing, I think, you know, it has to answer your question. I think now is the time, and all of these things are connected to it.
Absolutely. But I also think, you know, with what y'all were talking about with the distractions, like right now it's a huge voting day here, and they have Blackout Tuesday. And so Blackout Tuesday, everyone's putting something, you know, to the black picture and saying Black Lives Matter. So when you go through the hashtag and you want to think about, oh, who should I vote for? Oh, what's still happening? Oh, how's the protest in Atlanta going, or in DC going, and are people getting hurt? Or what's advice? What to do? All of that is now blank because you have this blackout Tuesday. Like, who came up with that? I don't think that just came up from thin air, you know? I think it was made as a distraction because it's been working. People haven't been using the Blackout Tuesday correctly. And it's just, no, you can go. Sorry.
Sorry. Finish your thought.
No, it's okay.
I was just going to say, too, this whole idea of information that we get in today's media and just how we get our information, like social media, the internet, you know, the algorithms actually just send you what you want to see.
That is so true.
Right? We don't even understand how we're controlled every day by the internet. Right? So if you're trying to spread a message to somebody who doesn't know the message, the likelihood of them seeing your message is very low because they're not going to receive that message because the internet, Google algorithms, the IG, Facebook algorithms won't send those posts like to the top of their feeds. Like it's probably buried on like page 5,000 for them. Right. Yeah. So that's another thing that we have to be very aware of in terms of when we try to use the internet to get our information or even like pass information on to
a lot of technological manipulation for sure. I just want to chime in on, you know, to the question that I asked in terms of why now, just for my 2 cents. And you kind of touched on it a little bit in your opening remarks, Raven, just kind of talking about, COVID-19 and as it relates to this situation where it's, kind of lost in the mix. Nobody's really talking about that there's actually a virus that's still out there. It hasn't been defeated. It hasn't gone away. And protesters, definitely you need to, protect yourselves. But I think that when you have a situation where persons have been, shut in, they've been locked in their homes for going on almost 3 months, all of that isolation. And then obviously a lot of people are suffering, financially. I know in your country, Raven, in the States, a lot of people are still waiting on their stimulus checks and help from their, whether it's the federal government or the local state governments. So when you add all of that together, people being, so isolated and the psychological effects of that, and once again, people suffering financially and emotionally, mentally, and whatnot, I think all of that kind of factors into just wanting to and just unleash and, and then when you see, these images and you see, Black people being, murdered and being caught on on video that we can all clearly see and shared on social media, all that added up together, I think are factors in terms of why we're seeing, these protests on another level, which we perhaps didn't see with, previous, unjustifiable murders of our people. When it comes to the looting in particular and persons, smashing windows and stealing items, this and that, none of that, I'm sure, once again, and I said this already, is justified, but it's certainly understandable. You can understand people's anger and frustration just based on, everything that's previously happened. And all of this isn't new. I mean, particularly, and I'm preaching to the choir here, once again, just from a historical context standpoint, Raven, your country, the United States, we're talking about over 400 years of, racism, oppression, and, police brutality. The list goes on and on. So, I mean, it's what do you expect? What does white America expect, to happen? People are angry. They're outraged. Me as a parent, I'm angry. I'm outraged, and I've had to have certain conversations with my children over the last week to 2 weeks that I thought perhaps I would never have to have with them. It's a very sad state of affairs right now that the world is in.
Hez, I think it's also important to, again, when we're talking about sort of the history of racism, 400 years, absolutely. But systemic racism is a big part of this as well. That's ingrained into the culture and the fabric, and to the point where it's not overt, right? It's very subtle in some instances where it's happening to you. It doesn't feel right, but you just don't know exactly why. And that's the power, the harmful power of systemic racism, because you just kind of accept it as, well, kind of that's how it is because that's how the structure allowed it to be. And so that's another critical piece of we're talking about the conversation, the discussion.
Another thing that's just really, really bothered me, just having to be out here and protest. And I know that I'm around people that are possibly at risk because of their age. And then me thinking about, wow, my grandma was actually out here doing the same thing when she was my age. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And I think a lot of people don't realize, it's not that long ago. Martin Luther King, all this didn't happen like over 300 years ago. Like, no, this just happened. This is recent. And I think, the more that's brought to people's attention too, maybe they'll start realizing. But the other thing that was bothering me, it's not that I'm against rioting and all of the destruction, like I said before, but, the news actually has been able to see and finally picking up what social media has found, that the KKK and other groups are going in and starting the riots, and that they're leaving bricks.
I saw that outside. Today.
Yeah.
There's piles of bricks just randomly in the middle of the street. I was like, yeah, how do random bricks just get in the middle of the street? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. That's just inciting.
Exactly.
That's just,
there's videos out right now showing police officers busting their own car windows and buildings.
I saw that. Yeah.
And did you see the one? I think this is crazy.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, there's one of somebody calling as restaurant owners. They were Black restaurant owners. They were calling the cops because they wanted the cops to help protect their restaurant. And the cops went and arrested the owners because they were Black, and they assumed that that's who was rioting.
So a lot of
I would
stuff. Go ahead, Angela.
say, well, most of everything of what I've seen has been very disturbing. One that hurt, that I guess maybe really upset me more than some of the others, I guess. I don't know how to describe it, but were the two students coming home.
I couldn't even watch that.
Right. Just after their curfew time.
Oh, that, yes.
Just
45 minutes, maybe?
I don't even think it was 45 minutes. I think it was like 15 minutes, and they just happened to go past the street near where there were protests going on. And they literally tased them and dragged them out of the car. And I honestly, again, in many of the videos I've seen, I can't believe what I'm seeing. Like, because I can't comprehend that. Like, it's beyond my brain to comprehend why anyone, let alone a police officer, would do that. Like, and so it hurts. These videos they rock me to the core. They break my heart. I don't understand. I truly can't, and I don't want to understand how somebody can do that. We have to make this stop. This cannot be okay. This cannot be normal. My children cannot see this and think that this is, not that it's okay, but I can't allow them to be desensitized to it either.
The system's been broken in many facets, many facets. And to touch on your point, Angela, about understanding, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the Stanford Prison Experiment.
Yeah.
Yes. Watched it. That explains it. Like, when you give people power and authority over another group of people, right? That's why a lot of things have to be fixed. A lot of things have to change. I don't even understand how, like, policing it's something that's necessary, but it's also something that, they're given a lot of power over society. And it baffles me sometimes that a police officer can be a police officer for as long as they can be, because they see the worst in society. They're they have to be mentally drained, and not also that they develop biases and jadedness throughout the years of just working the beat. I don't think police officers should be allowed to work for so long. Like, there should be a time span, a lifespan of how long they could work the beat before they have to move on and do something else, because they'll bring that jadedness. They'll bring that, and that's the Stanford Prison Experiment proves that you give someone authority over time, like, a lot of people will take advantage of it. Right?
Well, so I think they're taking advantage because there's no consequences, and that's really
absolutely.
They can do what they want.
If the system doesn't allow and doesn't protect the masses and gives other people free reign over another individual, then absolutely. So when we talk about I believe some of the things that we have to look at when we talk about changes is, okay, so if you're an officer that commits a act or a crime or whatever it is, what is the consequence? Right now, the police unions protect them, and that has to be evaluated and looked at, because especially if you're taking someone's life in the manner that we've seen them, there should be no protections. There's no excuse for that. That's contravening the very purpose of the idea of to serve and protect. And
absolutely, so cutting off somebody's air supply for over 8 minutes. I mean, give me a
so there has to be consequences. I know earlier when we talked about leadership, it just doesn't start at the President Trump. It's all the way down. It's an organization. We're seeing, racism alive in people's workplaces and their companies and schools. It's all over. And so leadership at all levels have to be held accountable in order to properly address this thing.
No, absolutely. And even the third degree charge is just ridiculous, in my opinion. But the other thing too is, I don't like
Well, two different autopsy reports are also ridiculous too, right? Like,
yeah, well, but
that's
I think
crazy.
this is the
How he
thing.
was still even a police officer.
This is the thing though. Like, can we trust that humans are going to become better? Like, that's the $1 million question. Human beings. Yeah, like humans are self-serving. So I totally agree with you, Audley, in terms of holding police officers accountable. But how many times throughout history have we seen people in positions of power manipulate that power, use that power to their advantage? Side deals are getting cut. I know this guy. I can't put this guy away. So I just, like, I don't know. It's just.
Absolutely does agree. It does, but I think that I still believe that is a better approach than just saying, oh, well, we can't do nothing about it.
I'm not saying not do anything about it.
No, I'm not suggesting that. No, but I'm just saying that we have to at least address it in some fashion. And if it starts with stiffer penalties, strong consequences, accountability, it's got to be there as a starting point.
Yeah,
so guys, as we begin to wind down a bit here, this has been a great, spirited discussion. And of course, we could go on and on. There's so many different things to discuss. I really appreciate everything everyone shared so far. As we do begin, to wind down here, kind of bringing it back home in terms of, once again, solution. This is a great forum, and, once again, we could talk forever. There's other forums, there's protests, this, that, and the other. At the end of the day, when it comes down to it, what are you going to do, Raven? Like, what is your commitment? How are you going to be a light? How are you going to contribute to change? Same to Angela, same to Audley, same to Adrian, and same to me. So let's begin to kind of share our, individual and personal, perspective as far as what are we going to do, and how can, we can point the finger, we can talk about the President of the United States, we can talk about other elected officials, we can talk about, our local police, state police, that and the other. But what are we going to do as individuals? How are we going to be a contributor towards positive change in our communities? Raven?
Mm-hmm. So for me, I do a lot of volunteering. I help out with kids a lot. I try to go to the communities that aren't as diverse so that they can see my face, see that I'm here helping out, and they're exposed to it. Because again, without integration, without people being exposed to different races, they don't really know. And so they're taught to be ignorant toward other cultures. Another thing that I always try to promote is voting. I show everything that happens with the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm out there, I'm protesting, I'm getting the word out, I'm educating people, and I'm also holding people accountable for just small comments that I might have just brushed off when I was younger. Like, oh, can I touch your hair? It starts there. So like even small comments that sound racist, or you can tell are going to lead into something that is racist and prejudice against another culture, just nipping it right there, just calling people out on it, and just teaching everyone to be better and being politically correct, because a lot of times you can offend people when you're not.
Thank you for sharing. Adrian?
Yeah, just obviously continue to work in the community with the youth. As you know, I'm a basketball coach, and I definitely use that platform to educate, to integrate, to definitely spread the knowledge to the next generation, because they're really the ones that are going to be the ones that really start the change. Like it starts with the next generation. So that's my big thing, is continue to work in the community with the youth, and also just continue to spread awareness, just the same thing as what Raven said, standing up for what's right. When people make those comments, and a lot of people make those little small little comments, they may not think it is offensive, but it is, Yeah. Especially when they start with, I don't mean to offend you, and you're about to be offended, right? Don't mean to sound racist, you're gonna get that racist comment or question coming. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Or I have Black friends.
Yeah. I've heard them all.
Audley, what about you, my man?
I think it starts as a parent first. I think that's the starting point for me in terms of how I educate my children. And I think the big part of the education certainly is around that, racism does exist, it's out there. And here's how you can respond and react to it. Especially interacting with the police. You have to be very careful and very sure of what you're saying and cautious and mindful just because of the climate that's out there. I agree with the other, both Raven and Adrian, with respects to continue to create that awareness. But there's a part of it, and maybe it's just a really simplistic and my perspective of being kind. I think kindness is what we need right now in our society more than anything else. Be kind to one another, show compassion, show love, show care, concern. I think those are the steps towards making society a better place. And I don't think it's humanly possible for you to be a racist and still be kind to someone at the exact same time. And so I think you're forced to actually make a choice as how you choose to behave and how you choose to treat other people.
Absolutely. Angela?
To Audley's comment, definitely as a parent, teaching my children that there is no place for racism, which is something that I do. I'm educating myself a little bit more about things that are out there, becoming involved maybe a little bit more. I am involved. I'm in parent councils and things like that so that I can learn from others as well. But it is those small comments and to remind people that that's not okay. Just, putting people in check just a little bit may remind them that they should be kind. And I'm an optimist. I'm a positive person. That's how I live. That's who I am. So being part of uncomfortable conversations and things like that, keeping this alive, keeping this going, reminding people and to participate in making the change. Everyone has to, because it is a human race, and we have to fix this together.
And I like that you said that everyone has to. It's a human race. So, and that goes to, for me, there's something for all of us to do. Once again, it's not about pointing the officials at this leader and that leader. Everyone has a role to play in making the world, a better place. And for me, just like, Audley, just like Angela, obviously I'm a parent as well, 4 young children. And as I said earlier, I've had to have conversations with them over the last couple of weeks that I never thought I would have to have, as far as, interactions with, law enforcement, police officers and things of that nature, and just, really explaining racism and historical context of racism. And, they see the images. I have the news on the TV. I try not to watch too much of the news, but I like to stay informed with what's going on. So, they'll come by and they'll see this, that, and the other, and, looting and, images of, just like George Floyd with, the officer with his knee on his throat, and, they're on TikTok as well. They see that stuff online. So you have to have these conversations with them. But one thing I do want to say, because it's very important to me, on this show, there are certain areas that, we really don't get deep into. Politics is one of those areas, and, religion. But, just in closing, from my perspective, I'll just kind of briefly touch on and say, when we see all of this that's going on, that I think, the root of everything that we see in all of the unrest is truly, hatred, people hating people for, being different. And I'm a believer, I'm a Christian, and, we call that, hatred stems from pride, which stems from, sin. So I think, this is my perspective, this doesn't necessarily represent, TTS or our parent company, Circle Blue Media, but, there are deep-rooted spiritual issues, at play, and you can't fix spiritual issues with, physical solutions. I don't want to go any deeper than that, because I'll start preaching. I'll start giving a sermon here. But, I'm going to just continue to, spread love, continue to educate myself first and foremost, and my family. And to your point, Audley, as far as just, spreading acts of kindness and just, shedding as much light and as much love, as I can, as much light in this dark world. So that's my commitment as far as what I can do to make the world, a better place. But to your point, Adrian, you kind of touched on, the whole concept of, the human race and, people are who they are. And these things have been going on once again for, generations and generations.
Since the beginning of time. Since the beginning of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Since the beginning of time. So I don't want to be doom and gloom as far as that, things are going to get worse and they'll never get better and this and that. I just believe in controlling what I can control. And, even my children, I can't control them. I can only teach them. So the only thing that I can really control is myself, my attitude, my actions, my mentality. So I'm just going to continue to better myself and continue to spread and show love to the world. Guys, this has been wonderful. This has been really great. As we officially wind down, I'll just give everyone just a real quick, 30 seconds to share any last minute, final words, whatever's on your heart, whatever's on your spirit to share. Angela, why don't you go first?
It was great having this conversation, and Raven, meeting you, and Audley. And I just want us to be able to maybe have this conversation again in 3 months and see if anything is different, and
that would be great.
See what changes are made in this time, and just be kind. That's really it. It's be kind to one another for everybody's sake.
For sure. Raven.
It was really nice meeting all of you guys as well. And I agree with Angela. Just being able to have this conversation, it does a lot. So I appreciate you for having me and reaching out. And I would love to have this conversation again in a few months to see if anything's changed.
For sure. Adrian.
Yeah, I think that, we as people just need to sometimes slow down, self-reflect, take a look at life. We all got one life. That's it. We all want the same thing. Doesn't matter what color, what sex, what sexual orientation, whatever you are, it doesn't matter. We just all want the same thing. We all want to be loved. We all want to be happy. We all bleed the same color. So we are all the same. And if we can take a step back and just, like I said, really look at that, and forget about hating, whatever issues you may have, it usually just stems from yourself. So, try to just be a better person every day. And like Audley and Raven, Angela and Zion, like, be kind to one another, right?
For sure.
Love is always stronger than hate.
Absolutely. Love over hate.
Yeah, sure. Hey, look, it's a great conversation. Thank all of you for sharing the insights, the opinions. I think they're valuable. Really, that's the best way to learn is from one another. And I'll sort of lead this conversation with my own learnings. And again, I'm going to continue to share and promote the light and the compassion, and I think that's the answer. This is the long road that we have ahead of us, and the fact that we're starting these conversations and seriously committing to them, it's a very good thing, and the onus is on us to keep it going, whether you're on a podcast sharing to the internet or you're amongst friends at a dinner party. And we will go back to our dinner party soon.
Please, can we have a dinner party?
Gather. It will. Mass gatherings will take place again. But the point is, regardless of where you're at, I think there's always an opportunity. The one thing that's interesting is you're seeing, especially on social media, people are checking one another, and I think there's some positives in that as well. But the way you do it, right? You've got to understand that. Maybe someone was just enlightened now as to what racism is, and you can't hold them accountable for what happened 400 years because they didn't know. So I think all those are important things to keep in mind in terms of how we educate people, how we educate one another, and how we educate ourselves. So thanks for the time, guys. I really appreciate this.
Absolutely. So as I said, I'm a man of God, a man of faith, and I'm just going to continue to, pray for individuals and pray for us all collectively as the human race, as I believe Angela said, and I could not agree more. Guys, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your perspectives. It's been great to connect with everybody here and to hear what everyone had to say. I do want to take the opportunity while you're here, Audley. Once again, I want to congratulate you on your recent engagement.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Audley.
Thank you.
Congrats.
A good time. We weren't planning on getting married till next year, which is good because
Thank goodness. Because the two of you would have a nice wedding.
You were virtual, right?
That's right.
But no, thank you. Appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Good to end the podcast on that positive note. And also, coming up this Saturday, June the 6th, I want to wish a very, very happy birthday to my oldest son, Zaloam, who's turning 12. He'll be 12. Woo-hoo. And he also shares the same birthday as my younger brother, Courtney, Courtney Scarlett, who's part of our podcast show here. So happy birthday coming up to Courtney and Zaloam on Saturday, June the 6th. So guys, thank you so much once again to our audience for tuning in. Thanks for all of your love and support. Continue to stay positive, continue to shed light and love. Thanks for all your support. This is once again episode number 18 of season 3, and you're tuned into Toronto Talk Sports and more. For the love of the six, let's connect.